Hey guys, it's Lizzie. I'm back with another book review. Yes, before we get started, I am getting over a head cold, so if you can hear it, that's why. If I look a little sick or tired, it's because I am a little sick and a little tired. If I'm a little low-key, that's why. And now that I have made you all aware of it, that's the only thing you're going to be able to see for the whole video. Awesome, let's get started. So today I'm actually going to be talking about two different books because they are two books in a series. The Similars and the Pretenders by Rebecca Hanover. The Similars is a book that I found at Goodwill, of all places. Who would have guessed? And I got it for $1.15. I think I mentioned it in my book haul video. I can't remember. But nothing immediately drew me to this book. Like, the book cover doesn't do anything for me. It's just a pair, like a bunch of legs. The colors don't strike me. Wasn't immediately drawn to how it looked. But then I read the back and it was really interesting just because of how crazy it was. It talked about clones and a private prep school and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, what's this gonna be about? It's $1.15, so I bought it. And I'm glad that I did because it was actually really, really interesting. So I've realized that, I've always known that I really, really enjoy sci-fi and fantasy. That's probably my favorite genre to read. And what I've realized recently is that I really prefer sci-fi fantasy that takes place in the future, that's more futuristic than, say, something that takes place in medieval times or something before a big technological boom. I think what I really enjoy is reading about people and places once there's been a lot of advancement in technology. And when I think about myself, I'm not a super techie person. I don't have the latest iPhone. I don't have the best computer. I refuse to have any Amazon sound things in the house. What are they called? Google Home or anything like that. The most I have is my cell phone, right? But I like to read about stories that have some of that in it. And so that's definitely something that I really enjoyed about this book and that drew me to it when I read about it, because it's obvious that it takes place in the future of some sort. Now, as I read through the book, it doesn't specifically say how far in the future it takes place, but they have things like self-driving cars are the predominant form of transportation. Most people don't drive. They all have self-driving cars, or they use self-driving car services. They also all have Apple Watches that I don't have, but they don't call them Apple Watches, they call them plums. And I didn't even really get it until 3 chapters in, and then I was like, oh, an Apple Watch, but they call it plum, which I thought was funny. It reminded me of watching Nickelodeon as a kid, and iCarly had pear products instead of Apple products. It's kind of like that. But I just thought it was a cute name. I didn't think anything of it until later on. But their Apple Watches are also holograms, so that's the next level, I guess, is hologram Apple Watches. They also have implants somewhere in their head, which I am very against. That kind of freaks me out, but it's fun to read about. So they definitely have some technological advances that we probably have all of those things. They're just, we do have self-driving cars and we can make holograms and stuff, but just not in every person's everyday. The main character also makes reference to Harry Potter at some point. She's a fan of Harry Potter. She has a Harry Potter movie marathon, and that kind of took me out of the story a little bit. Not that Harry Potter can't be something that people continue to enjoy years in the future. I hope that they do, because I enjoy Harry Potter, and I've enjoyed it since I was a kid. But it was just such a random reference to something so modern that it just kind of took me out, but not enough to really upset the story. Established that it takes place sometime in the future. Now, part of this future advancement is that all babies, when they're born, obviously, they have the stem cells from their umbilical cord frozen, and that's just a common, normal thing in this timeline is that it happens for all babies, and no one thinks twice about it. And they do that so that if at any point in the baby's life, like as they get older, if they start to get sick, they can use the stem cells to then treat or cure whatever it is they're going through. So the whole premise of the book is that the DNA gets stolen, like 5 different babies' DNA gets stolen, and clones are created from those babies' DNA. And no one knows that this is happening. It happens when the babies are born, it gets stolen right away, the DNA gets taken to a private island, and then the babies are then grown in like artificial wombs. It's like the first time that that's happened. But again, no one knows that this is going on except for like the evil scientist guy that is doing it. And these babies are then raised on this private island, and I can't remember if they know that they are clones yet, like when they're young. But they're raised all on this private island. They're like homeschooled, they're taught, they go through really rigorous training to the point where they all develop almost like superhuman traits. They're all highly intelligent. They speak several languages. They all speak with British accents because the evil scientist guy he like hires caretakers and stuff and tutors to come to the island. Clearly I can't remember if I mentioned this, but he's like clearly a self-made billionaire, just like the richest of the rich, and he can afford all of this. And so the people that he hires, he pays them really, really good money to not tell anyone, obviously. And you later come to find out that, like, if someone had said something, he would have had them killed. Like, he's not above that at all. These kids are raised, private island, they've got these special abilities, and they have each other, but they don't really have, like, family, because they're clones that have been taken away to a private island. And then, of course, their junior year, when they're 16 or whatever, is when the evil scientist guy makes it known that they exist. They end up going to their junior year of high school. They end up going to the prestigious private prep school. I can't remember if I mentioned that was where the main character goes. Her name is Emma. Emma goes to this very prestigious elite private prep school called Darkwood. And this school takes a lot of pride in the fact that they're very inclusive and they accept all people, except that it's like a really, really rich place that really, really, really wealthy families go to. Families that have like raised their kids with the best education, who then can like test into the school. And apparently there are some kids on scholarships, but regardless, like, there is no private prep school that's truly inclusive. But that's not really what this book is about. So, because privilege is a real thing. Our main character, Emma, she goes to this school. Her dad is like some really successful business guy or whatever. And this prep school, though, it does take pride in being inclusive. And so part of that is then when these clones, when they are presented to the world, the one place that they should feel accepted is at this school, because the school is so accepting and inclusive, right? It just so happens, of course, that these clones, the originals of these clones, also go to this school. So now, for the school year, the clones are going to be going to school with the originals, and the summer before school starts, the originals' parents, who are the biological parents of these clones, have an opportunity, if they want, to meet with their clone children, right? And like 2 or 3, I think it's really just 2 of the clone families really, or clones in the originals' families really get along, and they want to like welcome them into the family, and that type of thing. But the other ones don't. And so that creates tension. There's a lot of like anti-clone movements in the book where people believe that these clones shouldn't have any rights, they shouldn't be allowed to be there. And it's interesting, and it makes you think, like, because cloning is something that we're able to do. I don't think there's never been a cloned human that we know of, right? But it is something that I could see happening in my lifetime anyway. And it makes you think, like, what do you consider a human life? Like, is a clone a human life? And I do, based on this book anyway. Oh, this is a topic. This is probably a topic. I don't want to get into, is a clone a human? But this book does raise that question. And yeah, I mean, these kids, they didn't have any choice into being clones, you know? And they're just trying to live their lives. And people are so mean to them about it. Okay, where was I? I'm kind of all over the place. As if all of my reviews are all over the place, but I feel especially so today. And if you're asking, Lizzie, why are you even making a video if you don't feel good? It's because I wanted to make this video last week and get it up last week, but I didn't because it was just a crazy week. And I want to make the video before I completely forget these two books. Anyway, so where was I? And then the school year starts. And our main character, Emma, is pro-clone. She feels very strongly about it, and she can't understand why people are so mean about it. Oh yeah. So for Emma, her summer was awful because her best friend, like her childhood best friend, her lifelong best friend, Oliver, passed away by suicide. And she found him. And that in and of itself is so traumatic, right? So she's like dealing with this huge death. But she goes to school anyway, has to go on with her life, and they meet the clones or whatever. And then shortly after, she finds out that her best friend Oliver had a clone. And he's now at school with her for the whole year. His name is Levi. And the first time she sees him, and it totally catches off guard. She didn't know that Oliver had a clone, right? No one told her. She just saw him, and she could tell that it wasn't Oliver because he had like slightly shaggy hair. He was a little bit like bulkier, like more physically fit than her best friend was. And obviously she found her best friend dead. So it was clear that it wasn't Oliver. Her first interaction with Levi is really aggressive. She like assaults him, and it's kind of weird because you just learned that she's very passionate about the fact that clones have rights, you know, they should have rights, they're just normal people. But then when she sees a clone of her best friend who tragically died, she just freaks out on him. Which I appreciate, because it shows that she's got some complexity to her, you know? We can believe so strongly in one thing, and then until we're faced with something in the physical form, it can just really make us feel something else. Now, Emma doesn't turn anti-clone or anything. She still believes in it, but her reaction and her having to process all of this just felt very real. So without spoiling anything, they go throughout their junior year, and I will say that there's like two big things in this book that I saw coming, and in a way that feels good as a reader to be able to see something coming, and then it does, and you're like, I knew it. There are also a lot of twists and turns that you don't see coming, or at least I didn't. And I will say that the sequel, The Pretenders, I didn't see anything coming in this book. It was so full of twists and turns. it really knocked me off. Like, in a good way. At times it is very, like, outlandish, but it's sci-fi, it's fantasy. You should be able to do that, and I will always say that when I talk about books, is, like, be as crazy as you want to be as an author, because that's what I want to read. I want to read something that takes me out of our world, right? There's so much more I could say about these books, but I don't want to ruin it. As far as, like, plot and stuff, I will, okay, so obviously I recommend these books. Again, if you're into YA fiction, because it's YA fiction, you're reading about teenagers in prep school. So, obviously, take that into consideration. I really enjoyed the story. I really, really enjoyed the story. I liked the characters. Emma, the main character, is a little bit of, like, a not like other girls type of girl at times. Like, she's a tomboy, which I get. I am a tomboy too. Sometimes I'm, like, ultra femme too, but for the most part. I mean, I just hate being put into any sort of box, right? But Emma is, like, clearly, like, self-identifies as a tomboy. There are, like, references to her that feel a little forced, like the author is trying really hard to make her seem really edgy. Like, there's one reference to the fact that Emma eats pizza backwards, and that, like, makes her so cute and quirky. And I'm just like, that's so stupid. It's, like, such a stupid thing to me. Overall, though, like, it wasn't enough to make me not enjoy the books, because I did. I read this in, like, 2 or 3 days, and then, on the back of this, it said, "Don't miss the Pretenders." And I was like, so is there a sequel? And I looked it up, or it said it in here or something. Like, the very last page says, "Don't miss the thrilling conclusion, coming January 2020. And I had finished this book, like, the last week of January. I was like, perfect timing. Like, I had just bought this at Goodwill. This book came out in 2019, and I found it at Goodwill, which, take of that as you will, but I read through this very quickly. For me, I, you know, don't read super fast unless I'm, like, really invested and really like the story. So then I immediately went out and bought this book at Barnes & Noble. I could only get it in hardback because the paperback doesn't come out until, like, August or something. And again, I read this in, like, 2 days because I was so invested in it. So the storyline itself is great. The characters, I didn't really have any problem with the characters themselves. Sometimes Emma felt a little forced, like, her edginess felt a little forced. I will say something that I feel like the book could have been stronger at is dialogue. I felt like the characters didn't have very unique voices. I felt like you could read any part of anyone's dialogue and you would have no clue who was saying what. It just seemed like they had no own unique voice. So that's, like, my one con, kinda, is that the dialogue is weak. But it doesn't, like, super take away from the book, because the storyline itself, like, just carries the entire story. Okay, I can't remember, I think it was Lucky Caller, the last book that I did a review on, where I was like, the characters are awesome, blah, blah, blah. And it's, like, the opposite for this book. So, the characters are good in these books. I liked them. They just weren't very unique and strong. No, and maybe part of that is because it deals with clones. So there's a lot of, like, duplicates of characters. But even then, like, there is an attempt to show a difference between the originals and the clones. They have different names, obviously, but also the way that they're physically described is a little bit different. But just when it comes to dialogue, I just felt like there wasn't too much of a difference. Now, when I was looking the author up, she used to write for a soap opera. And I feel like that comes through strong in the storyline. I think she's an amazing sci-fi writer because she has this, like, soap opera background. Soap operas, I've never like watched any type of soap opera, but what I understand of soap operas is that they can have really crazy storylines and just crazy things happen that are very out of our current reality. But again, I like that. And so I think it works really well for her to then transfer over into writing sci-fi because the way her brain must work is very interesting to me. If she's able to create all of these like crazy storylines and timelines without it getting super confusing. The end of the second book, you're like, wait, what? And then you have to like rethink the entire book. But in a good way. So yeah, that's my review. If you enjoy YA fiction, if you enjoy sci-fi the way that I do, and you want a good story that's got twists and turns, that's gonna keep you on your toes, that's a quick read, but that is a little bit weak maybe in the dialogue, I suggest The Similars and The Pretenders. I enjoyed it. I really did. Not my favorite of the year, but that's okay. It's right up there. It's probably number 3, honestly. Like Lucky Collar, Winterwood, right up at the top. And then I actually think that these are next. Because I enjoyed reading it so much that I went out and immediately bought the sequel the next day. It's just a really interesting look into cloning humans, too. So, makes you think about things. And it takes place in some futuristic time. Who knows how far away. I think that's it. Oh, I have to do the bibliomancy. I don't know how, I guess we'll do it in both books. So if you're new, bibliomancy is when I just flip to a random passage and read it, and that's what we're meant to hear from this book. Oh, the start of a chapter. The Suspect. The wind whips at my cheeks and ears as I hurry back to Cyprus, walking as briskly as I can without running. For the first time, I'm afraid of him, of the Similars. He explained about the stock, but he failed to tell me how his cut disappeared like that, so quickly. Are they human? I ask myself, the cold starting to pound in my head. Who? No, what are they? Dun dun dun! So that's interesting. And then from the sequel, we'll read from here. With the plasma from his experiment, I explain, your plasma. Let's just say if I go missing, it's because I've been sentenced to duty for the rest of my life. Ransom didn't even deny that he's been experimenting on you. He's already injected himself with the cocktail. That's what he called it. He said you have no rights because you signed a contract. We did, Iago answers. He's not wrong. But would it even hold up in court, I press? We've talked about this, Emma, Maud jumps in. It's not in our best interest to fight him over this. So yeah, there's like some shady characters that take place, some people that you think are good that end up not being so good. It's interesting. I enjoyed it. That's it. I hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about books while I'm not feeling the best and not looking my best. I hope you guys are doing well. I'll see you in my next video. If all goes to plan, I'll have a book up next Sunday, which is my birthday. Whoopee! That's kind of like a book Q&A. 31 questions for my 31st birthday. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't filmed it yet. That's it. I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys are doing well. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys!